Hello everybody, welcome to Dandelion Cottage and Marvelous Monday. I'm Leslie Watkins. I hope you had a great weekend. We had some beautiful spring weather here, so I was able to spend a good portion of yesterday outside in the yard and getting the chicken coop squared away and letting the chickens out and run around, and it was a really fun day. And it felt really good to be moving. I feel like such a slug after spending the weekend, I wish, the winter here cooped up in my studio. So getting outside and getting the blood moving and breathing the fresh air and listening to the bird song was pretty amazing. And now that we have officially started spring, I am thinking about my watercolor sketchbook and my nature journals. And I've got a lot of really great classes and events coming up, sketching birds, flowers, insects, butterflies, all sorts of things. And today I thought I would share with you a really quick and easy way to get started with something that you probably already have. And those are your watercolor pencils. So let's get started. So here are my watercolor pencils. And let me get that glare off of there. Here we go. I have them divided into two cases. So I've got my warm colors and my cool colors. And these are both sets. So we have a couple of different sets available. You have the beginning set, which has 13, I think it's 13, yeah, 13 colors in it. And this is an important set to have because it has the black, the white, and the gray. And then it has your primary colors and some of the secondary colors. And then there's also an additional set that you can add on that has some very useful colors in it. So I would really recommend that you get both. You'll be glad you did, rather than having to mix all the time. But if you can only get one for now, then certainly start with the beginning set. And then I have some other things. I have my blender pens here. Now some of these I haven't used for a long time, so I hope they haven't dried out. And this is an old Wink of Stella brush that's empty, but I can still use it as a water painter, and it will have a little bit of the residual sparkle in it, so that could be fun. And I've got my spritzer. These are the old aqua painters, and I also have the new water painters handy, and I'll get those out because I'll probably want to be using those as well. The stamp set I'm going to be using today is called Fancy Phrases. And I chose this one because I like this big image of this floral bouquet, and it also has this other little sprig here. But it also has these really great sentiments, and that's the reason why I actually got this set, because of this one in particular. I like very much A Little Something Just for You. And I'm not always able to keep people's birthdays on time or get all of my Christmas cards out to all the people that I wish that I could send them to, but it is possible to send little somethings in the mail as a note card or a little gift at funny times of the year. And so for that, I like to be able to let people know that I'm appreciating them and that I have a little something for them. So these kind of very generic expressions really speak to me. So I've got those mounted up. And then the other thing I have handy here is I have a standard medium envelope and a very vanilla note card that's a half sheet of the 8.5 by 11, and I've got this hinged book style, but I think I'm going to be using it landscape. And then I also have one of our note card and envelopes in very vanilla. So you can see that they're slightly smaller than the standard. So if I put them next to each other, it's that much of a difference. But these are really nice because they come in a pack ready to go, and there are 20 of them in there. You get 20 pre-scored note cards and 20 of these little envelopes, and these will go through the mail. And then I have a scrap of very vanilla here, and this is a piece of the watercolor paper Fluid 100, and this one measures 3 3/4 by 5, and that fits nicely on the top of this standard size note card. So first I'm going to use this scrap and get myself organized here. I have the watercolor pencils in two groups, as I mentioned. This is the warm and the cool tones, okay, and that just helps me to be able to grab the color that I'm looking for more easily. I also have my stamps mounted up, so I've got the great big bouquet, I've got the little sprig, and I've got my sentiment ready to go. I have a paper towel, I've got my extra water container if I need it, I've got a damp sponge, and today I'm going to be using the mint macaroon ink for my stamping. Now what I recommend that you do is use any color you like. It doesn't matter one bit what color you're using, so long as it's light. And we have a lot of very light colors that are useful, such as Sahara Sand, So Saffron, Balmy Blue, the Petal Pink, Blushing Bride, the Mint Macaron, and others. And then if you want to use an ink that's a little darker, that's okay too. Just stamp off once so it's not quite so dark. All right, so just going to ink up my image. And I'm not sure when the last time I re-inked my pad was, so I'm not sure how light or dark it's going to come out. But we will see very quickly. And I'm just grabbing my stamp pad because the image may be a little bit bigger than the paper. Oh, I think it'll make it. All right, so I'm going to put this over in the upper left corner. There we go. Perfect. So I think you can see that. I'll zoom you in so you can see better. There we go. All right, so I'm just going to start coloring in some of my leaves, and I'm not paying too careful attention to the names of the colors of the pencils that I'm picking up. I'm just grabbing tonalities that I'm looking for. For instance, this one happens to be Bermuda Bay, and it's similar in tone to the Mint Macaron. And I'm just going to very gently I'm hardly applying any pressure at all, and I'm just putting a little bit of tone on my leaves. And I want to vary my greens, so I'm going to switch now and get more of a yellow green. And again, keeping it super, the pencils are very saturated with color, so a little goes a long way. And you may want to have a pencil sharpener handy too. And then I'm just going to add a darker green, and I'm just putting this in some of my shadow areas. Now if you're new to painting and you're not familiar with color mixtures and values and how to create form using light and shade, you'll want to look into my upcoming beginning watercolor class, and that's going to, it's a course, and it is 6 weeks long, and the next session is going to be starting in April. Wait, let me count. May. It's going to start in May. And if you can't make it in May, it's going to run again in September. But I only do this 3 times a year, and it's a very comprehensive workshop. And I strongly recommend that you get a little bit of a background in some of the art concepts that will help you to think like an artist. So you'll be able to understand what it is that you're doing and why you are doing it. All right, so these are not things that we're just born knowing. You actually learn from other people. So if you take the time to do that, I think that you'll be very happy with the results. So stay tuned for that. And the way you find out about when that's coming up is by going to my website and signing up for Notes, which is my newsletter. It comes out on the 1st of each month, and that will tell you as the time approaches that that you might want to get ready for the beginning watercolor course. Now next month I have some really fun classes coming up in nature studies. So we will be painting roses, birds, and butterflies, and we'll be using watercolor, water-based inks, and the watercolor pencils. So there's going to be something for everybody, and you won't want to miss that. So make sure that you're on the list to be able to get the listings of all the classes that I have coming up then. Okay, now I'm just going to take a little bit of blue. These flowers remind me of forget-me-nots, these little tiny ones, so I'm just going to give them a little bit of a blue tone. Now, even without adding the blender pen or any water, this already looks very charming, and it will give you a very nice soft look to your card. So you could leave it just as it is. But I'm going to take my blender pen, and you'll notice that the point is a little bit discolored from having used it in the past, but don't worry about that. That's not going to affect what you've just done. And I'm just very gently rubbing the surface that I lightly applied the watercolor pencil, and it's just kind of pulling it together and giving it a beautiful little wash effect. And in these areas where I have two-tone, it's blending them together perfectly. And I will give you a close-up of this in just a couple of seconds. See how close we can get. You see that? All right, so now if you look at here. So this is a very effective, very simple, super easy way for you to get a lovely hand-drawn and painted effect, either freehand or with your stamps. There are a lot of stamp sets in the catalog that are perfect for this kind of technique. And in the classes I have coming up, I will be noting some of the sets that coordinate particularly well with the different lessons. And you can always substitute whatever sets you may already have. Okay, now I'm going to take I've got my paper towel here, and I'm just going to wipe my tip on the paper towel, make sure that there's no green paint on there, and I'm going to go into my beautiful rose here. Now, the blender pen will also pick up the stamped image a little bit, the mint macaron that I used to originally stamp the image with, excuse me. So I'm staying away from those areas where there's a lot of line work, because that will contaminate my pink. And while I don't mind a little bit of the graying in some areas, I want to keep my roses looking nice and pink. Again, I'm going to take my paper towel and clean my point, and now I'm going into my little blue buds and flowers for the forget-me-nots. And I think this is a really great way to usher in the spring with a pretty little floral bouquet like this. All right, and then once again, I'm taking my paper towel, and now I'm going to go into these yellow flowers. And again, I'm staying away from the deeply lined areas so that I can keep them nice and bright. And these kind of remind me of primroses, or, oh, what's the name of that other flower? The evening primrose. Here we go. All right, so that looks pretty good, and I quite like that, but I'm going to take it to the next level now. So I'm going to put my cap back onto my blender pen so that it doesn't dry out, and now I'm going to go back into what I've already done, and I'm going to add a little more color to darken some of the areas. And I'm being careful to stay away from the areas where I want to keep it light. And I'm going to take a darker red. Now what is this? This is rich raspberry. So I'm going into the shadow areas of my roses. And I'm not trying to go as dark as I can go all at once. Okay, so I'm working into my darks. So let's see how that looks. I think you can begin to see a little bit of the form emerging now. Okay, and what's this one? Melon Mambo, Cherry Cobbler. Let's try Cherry Cobbler. So this is going to be even darker. And I'm being very careful just to put that into the areas where I want my shading to be. And I'm leaving my highlights alone. Okay, so I want to make sure that my highlights stay nice and light. There we go. And I think the last thing I want to do is just to go into my leaves and give them a little bit more color. For this, I'm using the garden green. And I'm not doing this to all the leaves, I'm just picking out a few here and there. And where's my blender? There it is. All right, so I think that's enough for this one. I just want to add my sentiment. So I'm getting out my Mint Macaron ink, and this is my A Little Something Just for You. I'm going to put that in this corner. Not terribly straight, but that's okay, it'll work. And then with my liquid glue, I'm going to add this to the front of my ready to go pre-scored note card. So there's a very sweet note card that you can prepare very quickly for somebody. I'm going to take my envelope, and this time with the pretty sprig, add a little decoration to the back of my envelope, just like so. And there it is. So that's application number 1. All right, next we're going to be using the water painters. Let me just give you a oops, wrong way. There you go. And any stamp set that you like will work perfectly for this technique. It's very quick and easy. It's great for doing nature studies. If you want to get outside and sketch the flowers or the birds, just bring your watercolor pencils with you and you'll be good to go. Okay, now this time I'm using the Fluid 100 watercolor paper. I'm going to be using the same ink and the same image, but I'm going to be applying the watercolor pencils and then going over them with water. So for this technique, you want to make sure that you're using a paper that will take a wash. So the Fluid 100 watercolor paper is ideal, but if you'd like to use the shimmer white, that will take a light wash, but you have to be careful. So there's my bouquet. And again, I'm going to go into my flowers, and I'm using the yellow. This is Daffodil Delight. I'm just putting a little bit of just a light sketch, rubbing gently. And I'll get my pink started. Let's see, what do I have here? Flirty Flamingo, Melon Mambo, and Calypso Coral. So I'm going to start with the Flirty Flamingo. I'm just going over the entire flower. And the one next to it. A little bit too light for me to see. I have to hold it up closer so I can see where my flowers are here. Sorry if I'm getting my head in the camera. Getting these sweet little buds. And then back to my greens. So again, I'm going to start with that Bermuda Bay. Another little rose up here that I missed. Okay, I think I've got everything. I just want to go back into those leaves now. So I'm using the Granny Apple Green for my light areas. And then I have Old Olive for the areas in shadow. Okay. Let's see what happens when we add our water. So I'm going to be starting with my smaller water painter, And I'm just going to give that a little bit of a squeeze to get the water moving. Okay, so you can see a drop came out. And I'm just going to be using a tiny little bit of water. It doesn't take much, and I've got my paper towel here to help control the amount of water. And I'm going to get these areas moistened. So this is going to act as an underpainting. In other words, I'm going to go back in with more color after I do this. So this is just the beginning. Make sure I'm on screen here so you can see. There you go. So I'm just kind of melting all the tones together. I can squeeze a little bit of water to clean the brush when I switch areas. Okay, and then finally we'll get to our little blue flowers that I'm calling forget-me-nots. You can make them whatever flower you happen to like. You know, when you're working from your stamps, you don't always have to color them as though they are the original intention. For instance, you know, if you've got something that a flower form that looks like a rose, it could also be a peony and vice versa. So just use your imagination. Okay, I'm going to go back in now with my darker tones, and I want that cherry cobbler, and I'm just going to increase the color in the shadow areas, coming around here on all of my pink roses. Give that a little drop of water. There we go. And I think you can see that these things begin to shape up. Every month I have the Watercolor Card Club, and I've been focusing on watercolor and painting with ink. But I'm going to, this month, I'm going to show you more techniques and how to use the watercolor pencils, because I'm hoping that I will inspire you to get outside and start sketching from life. It's a lot of fun. It's something you can do in your garden, in the park, in the woods, wherever you may live. And I sometimes I'll drive to a location and I'll just sketch from the driver's seat of my car. even if it's raining out. I will be including a list of supplies that may be useful for you to get below. You can go to my online store and get just a few of these basic things to get you started. And then you'll be able to follow along with the Watercolor Card Club and the upcoming nature sketchbook classes that I have. So I think you can see how I am just gradually building up my color and the form. I'm going to go back into those green leaves, and this time I'm taking the garden green and I'm going to be adding a little more pressure and a little more color into these areas where I want it to be nice and rich. Also, in the beginning watercolor club, I talk a lot about values and temperature, and these are very important concepts that you want to be able to be thinking about as you're painting to give your images a more pleasing and convincing look. Okay. All right, now let's get into that yellow primrose. So I'm going into the center of the flower and adding more pigment on these buds. I'm going to make sure that my brush is clean. Give that a little squeeze. I can moisten those areas. And then I'm going to go back in. This is the pumpkin pie, and this time I'm just going to take a tiny bit off the tip of the pencil point, because I don't want these yellow flowers to turn into orange flowers. I want them to stay yellow, but I just want to get a little bit of an accent into this darker recesses of the interior of the blossom. Now I think I've neglected my forget-me-not, so let me get into my blues and give those a little bit of moisture on my buds. Sorry if you can't see. Let me get you in the screen better. There we go. All right, now I've got a Pacific point here, and again I'm just going to add a couple of strokes here and there. Just make sure I'm not losing the shape of my flowers. Again, a little bit indistinct here, so I can just add a couple of petals as needed. There we go. Where's my green? Here's my green. So I think we're just about done. I just want to add some rich accents now, so some darks. And for that I have the, once again, the garden green. And I can also increase those darks. This time I've got the gorgeous Grape. And if I just put a couple of little touches here and there, very sparingly, I can increase the effect. And I can also sketch in some of the veins on the leaves. Give it a little bit of a blend here and there. And my cherry cobbler again. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is the same thing, where I take just a little bit off the tip of my point, and now I can use my brush tip to add some pretty strokes. To indicate the shapes of these petals. Alright, so that's looking pretty good to me. Just a quick little sketch. Very pretty. And just looking at what I want to get a little darker in this one area. Let me just, taking my, there. Just looking like it was a little bit too white in here. There we go. Just bring that around and blend. I think I missed a petal. There we go. Much better. And I can go in with that gorgeous Grape and put a little accent right in there, right in the center. There we go. That's what I'm looking for. Do a little more blending. Okay. Now let's put this card together. And let me see, what other sentiments do I have here? I think this time I'm going to do birthday wishes. I really like this fancy phrases set very much. It's a nice one to have that covers a lot of different occasions. I'm getting my ink pad out. Zoom you out so you can see what I'm doing. All right. There we go. Oh, while I have my ink pad out, let's do the envelope. Don't want to forget the envelope. I've got my very vanilla card base here ready to go. I do want to show you one more thing. that you can do to dress these up just a little bit more. I hear the chickens are ready to be let out. I don't blame them. I want to get outside too. So I'm just mounting that. It's a very beautiful, soft springtime card. And I want to get my bone folder, give that a nice burnish, make sure that the glue is spread evenly and that everything lays nice and flat. It's all in the details. Okay, now that last little thing that I want to do is to take my Wink of Stella. Okay, now the Wink of Stella is another barrel pen brush, but this time in the barrel it's got a lot of sparkle. And so I can take that and I can just run that around here and there. I don't have to cover everything, but just a few little places to give it a little added sparkle. And I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but we'll see. A little bit. You can see it in the yellow, I think. There you go. See that? Okay, folks. So there are a couple of very fun ways that you can use your watercolor pencils to make some very sweet springtime cards. If you don't have these note cards handy, I want to suggest that you do get a package. They fit into the mini pizza boxes perfectly, so if you want to make a little note card set for somebody or for yourself, you can also do that, and I will list those in the supplies as well. So check out the supply list that I'll be posting shortly below. As soon as I get done with the video, I'll get those things up. And come back again on Wednesday for Watercolor Wednesday, where I show you how you can paint a rose from scratch using the watercolor pencils and the water painters. So have a great day. I hope you're enjoying weather as nice as we are here, and you can get outside and get some fresh air and see spring emerging. And I will see you on Wednesday. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay creative, and I'll see you next time.